I can understand that some of us not really know the historical background much about our president. So in this section, I would want us to listen to a brief historical analysis, to his perspective as per how he became the president, the transitions that took him all this while, and finally him becoming the president of this country. So I'd like you to watch.
Tinubu changed Nigerian politics forever. Some people call him the Jagaban. Others call him the master strategist. Some see him as the architect of modern Lagos. Others believe he built the most powerful political machine Nigeria has ever seen. But here is the question. How did an accountant become the most powerful politician in Nigeria? How did a former senator who spent years in exile during military rule eventually become president of Federal Republic of Nigeria? Was it luck? Was it strategy? Or was it decades of planning that few Nigerians truly notice? Today's video isn't about politics alone. It's about ambition. It's about patience. It's about power. And it's about a man whose influence has shaped Nigeria for more than 3 decades. Who will one day rule Nigeria? When people see Bola Ahmed Tinubu today, they see the president. They see convoys, power, influence, security details, international summits. But every story begins somewhere. Long before Aso Rock, there was a young boy growing up in Lagos. Tinubu was born on 29 March 1952. Although some details about his early life has been debated publicly over the years, what is widely accepted is that he grew up in Lagos and later pursued education and professional opportunity abroad. Unlike many politicians who inherited political structures, Tinubu first built a career in business, and that decision will later shape his political life. Because politics, after all, is often about numbers, negotiation, planning, strategy, the same skill that defines successful business leaders. This is where many people misunderstood Tinubu. Before politics, he understood finance. Before campaigns, he understood management. Before power, he understood organization. And those experiences will become one of his biggest political advantages. America changed everything. Tinubu later traveled to the United States. There, he studied accounting and business-related disciplines. He eventually graduated and built a professional career in the private sector. He worked with major companies, including Mobil Oil Nigeria, where he held finance-related positions after returning to Nigeria. This wasn't the glamorous political life many associate with him today. It was spreadsheet, budget, audit, corporate decision-making, deadlines, discipline. These years helped build the administrative style that supporters will later praise during his time as governor of Lagos State and begins their career inside government. Tinubu spent years in the corporate world before entering politics. Whether one agrees with his politics or not, this background helps explain why supporters often describe him as a strategic planner. Nigeria calls. By the early 1990s, Nigeria was struggling politically. Military government dominated national life. Democracy remained fragile. Then come the transition program that opened the door for election. Tinubu stepped into politics. In 1992, he was elected senator representing Lagos West under the Social Democratic Party, SDP. For many Nigerians, this was the first time they heard his name. Few could have imagined that this relatively new senator will one day become president. Then everything changed. On June 12, 1993, Nigeria held what many observers regard as one of the freest presidential elections in the country's history. Chief Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola, popularly known as MKO Abiola, was widely believed to have won, but the election was annulled. The political crisis that followed changed Nigeria forever, and it changed Bola Ahmed Tinubu forever. This is one of the defining moments in Tinubu's political story. Whether people support him today or not, his role during the pro-democracy struggle formed an important part of his political identity. The years of exile. After the annulment of June 12, many pro-democracy activists faced pressure from the military government. Tinubu becomes associated with the National Democratic Coalition, NADECO, a group advocating for restoration of democratic rule and recognition of the June 12 mandate. As the military intensified its crackdown, many activists flee the country. Tinubu was among those who spent time outside Nigeria during that turbulent period. Exile was not a comfortable chapter. It means uncertainty, distance from family, political risks, and no guarantee of when democracy will return. Yet many who participated in that movement later pointed to it as one of the defining struggles of their political lives. This period matters because it shapes Tinubu's public image. Supporters often describe him as someone who stood with democracy movement during military rule. Critics may disagree with aspects of his later political career, but this chapter remains part of the historical record of Nigerian transition back to civilian rule. The return home. In 1998, General Sani Abacha died. Nigeria began another transition towards civilian rule. Democracy returned. Many politicians come back home. Tinubu returned too. But this time, he had a much bigger ambition. He wasn't simply returning to participate. He wanted to lead. He wanted to shape the future of Lagos. Little did Nigerians know that the next chapter would transform not only his own political career, but also the politics of Lagos State and eventually the nation. In the next part, we will explore how Bola Ahmed Tinubu became governor of Lagos State, how it transformed the state internal generated revenue, how he built one of the most influential political networks in Nigerian history, and why many politicians across party lines either owe their rise to him or have spent years trying to defeat the political structure he created. This is where Bola Ahmed Tinubu stopped being just another politician and started becoming the most influential political strategist Nigeria has ever produced. Because everything people say about Tinubu today, whether they admire him or criticize him, it all began in Lagos. Without Lagos, there will probably be no President Tinubu. Today, we are looking at how one state became the foundation of one of the most powerful political empire Africa has ever seen. Governor of Lagos State, 1999. Nigeria has just returned to democracy. General Abdulsalami Abubakar handed power over to President Olusegun Obasanjo. The country was hopeful. Military rule has finally ended. Every state prepared to elect civilian governors. In Lagos, Bola Ahmed Tinubu contested under the Alliance for Democracy, AD. He defeated Funsho Williams of the PDP. On May 29, 1999, Tinubu became governor of Lagos State. At that time, Lagos looked nothing like the Lagos Nigeria knows today. The Lagos he inherited. Imagine Lagos in 1999. Traffic everywhere, road collapsing, mountains of refuge, poor drainage, flooding, weak healthcare, weak schools, civil servants who barely receive salaries. Government records were outdated. Tax collection were chaotic. Only a tiny percentage of businesses paid taxes. Revenue was extremely low. many believed Lagos was becoming impossible to govern. Remember, Lagos wasn't receiving the kind of federal support many expected. The state has to survive largely on its own. Tinubu understood something very early. He realized that without money, no government can succeed. The revenue revolution. This became one of the biggest turning points. Tinubu focused heavily on internal generated revenue, IGR. Instead of depending almost entirely on federal allocations, his administration expanded tax collection. More businesses were brought into the tax net. Government revenue collection became more organized. Leakages were reduced. Collection system became more structured over time. Lagos began generating significantly more revenue than before. Supporters argue this financial transformation gave later administration the resources to expand roads, transportation, healthcare, education, and other public service. Critics, however, they argue that the tax burden increased for many businesses and residents, and they question whether all public funds were managed transparently. Regardless of where people stand, few dispute that Lagos' revenue base grew substantially during and after these reforms. Building the Lagos of today. Now, let's talk about infrastructure. Many of the long-term projects associated with modern Lagos either started or were planned during Tinubu's administration. Road expansion, urban planning, drainage improvement, healthcare reform, education reforms, judicial reforms, civil service restructuring, local government reforms. Some projects were completed under him. Others were continued by governors who succeeded him. That is one reason Tinubu supporters argue his greatest achievement was not only what happened during his tenure, but the system he put in place for future administrations. The famous tax board reforms. One institution deserves special attention: the Lagos Internal Revenue. Its mobilization became a model often referenced by other states. Technology improved, revenue monitoring improved, compliance improved. Government planning became easier because revenue became more predictable. Many economists pointed to this as one of the key reasons Lagos experienced sustained financial growth over the following decades. The Obasanjo confrontation. Then came one of Tinubu's biggest political battles. President Olusegun Obasanjo's federal government disagreed with Tinubu over the creation of additional local government council development areas. The federal government withheld Lagos state local government allocation for years. It was a major constitutional dispute. Many believed Lagos would collapse financially. Instead, Tinubu administration relied more heavily on internal generated revenue to keep the state running, while the matter went through the courts. Eventually, the Supreme Court ruled on aspects of the dispute, and the withheld funds were released. For Tinubu's supporters, this episode became proof that Lagos could survive without depending entirely on federal allocations. It also strengthened Tinubu's image as a politician willing to confront the federal government. The political machine. But perhaps Tinubu's biggest legacy wasn't roads, it wasn't taxes, it wasn't revenue, it was people. Tinubu invested heavily in building political relationships. He identified young politicians. He gave many of them opportunities. Commissioners, special advisors, local government leaders, party officials. Many later become governors, ministers, senators, members of House of Representatives, business leaders, an influential figure in Nigerian politics. Supporters describe this as mentoring and institutional building. Critics argue it created a powerful political network that gave him enormous influence over Lagos politics. Either ways, few deny the scale of his political reach. The succession strategy. After leaving office in 2007, Tinubu didn't disappear. Instead, his successor, Babatunde Fashola, won the governorship. After Fashola came Akinwumi Ambode, then Babajide Sanwo-Olu. Each administration introduced its own policies and priorities, while also continuing many long-term projects initiated in earlier years. Supporters says this continuity helped Lagos avoid the policy reversal that often occur when government change. Critics, however, argue that Tinubu retained significant influence within Lagos politics long after leaving office. The birth of Jagaban. Around this period, another identity became nationally recognized, Jagaban. The title originally comes from the Boko Kingdom. Over time, supporters transformed it into a political brand. To many followers, Jagaban came to symbolize strength, political calculation, loyalty, victory, strategic thinking. Soon across Nigeria, people weren't simply calling him Bola Tinubu anymore. They were calling him Jagaban. Why many call him Nigeria's greatest political strategist? Here is why many analysts make that argument. Not because he won every battle. He didn't. Not because everyone liked him. They don't. But because of his ability to build coalition, recruit allies, and remain politically relevant over decades. He survived military rule. He became governor. He helped build opposition alliances. He played a major role in the coalition that defeated the long-ruling PDP in 2015 presidential election. And years later, he became president himself. That kind of political longevity is rare. Personal reflection. Whether you support Bola Tinubu or oppose him, one fact is difficult to ignore. Very few politicians have shaped Nigerians' democratic politics as deeply as he has. For some, he represents visionary leader and strategic planning. For others, he symbolized the concentration of political influence within a small elite. Both perspectives continue to shape the national conversation. Understanding Tinubu's rise requires examining both the achievements his supporters highlight and the criticisms raised by his opponents. Before ending the part 2, but here is where the story becomes even more dramatic, because after leaving Lagos government house, Tinubu didn't retire. Instead, he began building something much bigger than Lagos. He helped reshape Nigerian opposition politics, play a central role in the coalition that changed the country's political landscape, and eventually position himself for the presidency. In part 3, we will cover how Tinubu becomes the kingmaker of Nigerian politics, his roles in the formation of APC, the alliance that ended PDP's 16 years rule, his relationship with Buhari, and how the road to Aso Rock truly began. Forever. Bola Ahmed Tinubu has already conquered Lagos. He has built one of Nigeria's strongest political machines. He has produced governors, ministers, senators, national leaders. But one question remains. Could the kingmaker become a king? Many believe he will spend the rest of his political life deciding who becomes president. Very few believe he could one day occupy Aso Rock himself. But history had other plans. Let's continue. The formation of the APC. By 2013, Nigeria has been governed by the People's Democratic Party, PDP, for nearly 16 years. Many Nigerians believe the opposition could never defeat the ruling party because it remained divided. Tinubu understands something most politicians ignore. No opposition wins when it is fragmented. Instead of fighting separately, he pushed for a merger. Several opposition parties, including the Action Congress of Nigeria, ACN, the Congress for Progressive Change, CPC, the All Nigerian People Party, ANPP, and a faction of APGA came together. That merger produced the All Progressive Congress, APC. It was one of the biggest political realignment in Nigerian democratic history. Supporters describe it as a master stroke Critics argue it was primarily a strategic alliance for power. Either ways, it changed Nigerian politics forever. The Buhari alliance. Now came the next big decision. Who should lead the new party? Tinubu was already influential in the southwest. General Muhammad Buhari remained extremely popular across much of the north. Separately, none has been able to win the presidency under previous opposition platform. Together, they became a formidable political force. The APC selected Buhari as its presidential candidate for 2015 elections. Tinubu became one of the architects of the nationwide campaign. Supporters often say he made major political sacrifice by backing Buhari instead of pursuing the presidency himself at that time. Critics argue the alignment was a pragmatic calculation aimed at unseating the PDP. In 2015, the APC defeated incumbent President Goodluck Jonathan. For the first time in Nigerian history, an opposition party defeated a sitting president through the ballot box. It was a landmark moment for the country's democracy. Many observers credit the APC coalition and Tinubu's role within it as a key factor in that victory. From kingmaker to contender. After Buhari's victory, Tinubu's influence remained a constant topic of discussion. He continued to play an important role within the APC, but over time, questions began to grow. Will Tinubu eventually seek the presidency himself? As Buhari's second term approached its end, speculation intensified. Then, Tinubu made his intention clear. He wanted the presidency. The Miloko movement. During the APC presidential primaries, Tinubu delivered one of the most talked about political speech in recent Nigerian history. He declared Emiloko. In Yoruba, the phrase means, "It's my turn." Supporters interpreted the statement as an assertion that after years of helping others achieve political office, he had earned the opportunity to contest for the presidency himself. Critics view it differently. Some argue it reflects the sense of political entitlement. Regardless of interpretation, the phrase dominated headlines. It becomes one of the defining slogans of the 2023 election season. Sometimes a single sentence changes political history. Emiloko became one of those sentences. The 2023 presidential election. The election was among the most competitive in Nigerian democratic history. Three major candidates dominated the race: Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the APC, Atiku Abubakar of the PDP, Peter Obi of the Labour Party. The campaign were intense. Public debate were passionate. Social media exploded with political discussions. When the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) announced the results, Tinubu was declared the winner. His opponent challenged the outcome in court. After legal proceedings, the Supreme Court upheld his election. On May 29, 2023, Bola Ahmed Tinubu was sworn in as President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The kingmaker had become the king. The fuel subsidy decision. Then came one of the most consequential decisions of his presidency. During his inaugural speech, Tinubu announced the fuel subsidy was gone. The policy has existed for decades and has long been debated. Supporters of its removal argue that the subsidy consumed enormous public funds and was financially unsustainable. Critics warn that ending it without sufficient social protection will sharply increase the cost of living. The immediate impact was dramatic. Petrol price rose, transportation cost increases, food price climb. Inflation placed additional pressure on households and businesses. For many Nigerians, life becomes significantly more expensive. Economic reform. The subsidy reform was part of a broader reform agenda. Tinubu administration also introduced major changes to Nigerian foreign exchange system, moving toward a more market-driven exchange rate. Officials argue these reforms were necessary to stabilize the economy. improve investors' confidence, and address long-standing structural changes. Supporters says painful reform today could create a stronger economy in the future. Critics counter that many Nigerians are struggling with higher prices, reduced purchasing power, and economic hardship while waiting for those promised long-term benefits. The debate continues. Why Nigerians remain divided? Perhaps no recent Nigerian president has generated stronger differences of opinion. To his supporters, Tinubu is a bold reformer, making difficult decisions that previous administration avoided. They argue that restructuring the economy requires short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. To his critics, the reform has imposed severe hardship on ordinary citizens, and they question whether the benefits are reaching people quickly enough. Some also raises concern about governance, transparency, and political appointments. These competing views shape much of today's national political conversations. So, is Bola Tinubu changing Nigeria, or is he reshaping Nigerian politics? Perhaps he is doing both. Love him or criticize him, his impact is undeniable. He helped build one of Nigeria's most influential opposition coalition. He transformed himself from Lagos governor to national political strategist. He became president after decades at the center of Nigerian politics. Whether history ultimately judges his presidency as a success will depend on outcomes that are still unfolding, particularly on the economy, security, governance, and the everyday lives of Nigerians. Conclusion. One thing is certain, Bola Ahmed Tinubu's journey is unlike any other in modern Nigerian politics. From accountant to senator, to exile during military rule, to governor, to kingmaker, to president, his rise has shaped the country political landscape for more than 3 decades. Do you believe Bola Ahmed Tinubu reform will ultimately strengthen Nigeria? Or do you think they are reshaping politics more than improving people's life?
I also like to know what people think about the historical perspective about President Tinubu. Please drop the comment at the comment section there. And if this is your first time, please like, subscribe, press the notification button for more information. Thank you.